Tonight we'll start on chapter 9, and we'll get through chapter 9. Chapter 9 will kind of just the main topic of that is going to be, the theme is going to be 70 weeks. This is the toughest chapter in the book. This one's pretty tough. Chapters 10, 11, and 12, and kind of the plan with those is we're just going to. Chapter 10 is pretty short, so we're just kind of try to get through those 3 chapters over the next 3 weeks, not necessarily a chapter at a time, but probably a chapter and a half next week or so. That's the plan. But just kind of a little quick review and just kind of run through this. I like to use this as kind of a refresher of what we've covered so far. Chapter 1, we had they just went into captivity. We had the king's food was kind of the theme of that. With Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel. Chapter 2, we had Nebuchadnezzar's first dream, the dream where he wouldn't tell what the dream was, but he wanted somebody to interpret it. It turns out that the vision was of a golden statue and of the 4 world kingdoms, and that's what this handout is. Just kind of, I know it's not a very good copy, but that's the best I could come up with with what I had. But cover the timeline from Babylonian to the Medo-Persian Empire to Greece and then to Rome and then the 5th kingdom, which being the church. That's chapter 2. I was like, what chapter was that? Chapter 2. Chapter 3, we had the fiery furnace, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace there. Chapter 4 was Nebuchadnezzar's second dream, about him being the great tree, and everything kind of fed through them and how he protected everything. And then at the end of the chapter, because of his, pride, I would guess you would say, then he became a beast of the field for a time, and then he repented from that and then took the throne over again. Chapter 5, we had the fall of the Babylonian Empire, and the Medes and Persians kind of take charge there. Then we go back to chapter 6, which is Daniel in the lion's den. So remember the timeline, or the book of Daniel, the way we read it is not in chronological order, so kind of keep that. So then chapter 7, that was a big one. It was kind of a retelling of chapter 2, but with a lot more detail that we kicked out there of the next 4 world empires. Well, from Babylon to Rome, we kind of talked about that. Then chapter 8, we just talked about the Medo-Persian Empire and Greece with the goat and the ram, the vision of the goat and the ram. So chapter 9, the kind of the timeline, this is about 539, 536 BC, somewhere in that timeline. And like I said, the theme is 70 weeks. So how long is Babylon or is the Jewish nation in captivity at this time? How long are they going to be in captivity for? How many years? 70. Yeah. So this is going to be, like I said, 70 weeks is kind of going to be the theme. The last really 3 or 4 verses of the chapter is where the bulk of the confusion is going to come from tonight. So, but just kind of give you an idea of what Daniel's thinking and what Daniel's seeing. Verse 2 talks about he's reading the prophet Jeremiah, right? So he has these writings in his possession. He's reading and studying these things. So let's just kind of take a look at what Daniel is reading. So Jeremiah 25:1, Jeremiah 25:11, I'll read those. Jeremiah 25:1, the word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, which was the first year of Nebuchadnezzar as the king of Babylon. And then 25:11 and 12 is, and the whole land shall be desolate and astonished, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. Verse 12, then it came to pass, when 70 years are complete, that I will punish the king of Babylon and the nation and the land of the Chaldeans for their iniquities, says the Lord, and I will make it a perpetual desolation. So Daniel knew the time frame. He knew we're going to be here 70 years. He knows that. He's studying that, and he's also looking at, okay, this time should be wrapping up. So, he's probably going to be, if he goes in as a teenager, he's going to be close to 80 years old at the time of this writing here. So he knows the timeline. It's kind of what we're getting at. Jeremiah 29:10, for thus say the Lord, after 70 years are complete at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you and cause you to return to this place. Then Zechariah 1:1 is, in the 8th month of the 2nd year of Darius, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah. And then in verse 12, Then the angel of the Lord answered and said, O Lord of hosts, how long will you not have mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah, against which you were angry these 70 years? Now, here's kind of the cool part. If you don't believe the Bible's inspired, we're going to Bo's going to read 2 Chronicles 36, verses 15 through 21, just kind of to hear this part out.
And the Lord God of their fathers sent warnings to them by his messengers, rising up early and sending them, because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they mocked the messengers of God, despised his word, and scoffed at his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord arose against his people, till there was no remedy. Therefore he brought against them the king of the Chaldeans, who killed their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, had no compassion on young man or virgin, on the aged or the weak. He gave them all into his hand, and all the articles from the house of God, great and small, the treasures of the house of the Lord, the treasures of the king and his leaders, all these he took to Babylon. Then they burned the house of God, broke down the wall of Jerusalem, burned all its palaces with fire, and destroyed all its precious possessions. And those who escaped from the sword he carried away to Babylon, where they became servants to him and his sons until the rule of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. As long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years.
Yeah, so one of the reasons, and we're going to cover this more a little bit, that 70 years is why they're in Babylonian captivity. Yes, they had turned to a sinful nation. Yes, they were following false gods, but the 70 years part is because of the land Sabbath. So for 490 years, they didn't follow the land Sabbath. And what is the land Sabbath? Every 7 years, the land was to rest, right? So they didn't do it for 490 years, and every 7th year it's supposed to rest. How many land Sabbaths is that? 70. So now they're paying the children of Israel paying that 70 years back at this time. That's why 70 years is important. And you could also jot down Leviticus 25 verses 1 through 7, Leviticus 26 verses 33 and 35. But from Daniel's concern for this time frame and where the people are at, that is why the first part of chapter 9 is Daniel's prayer. Is what this is, and this is why he's praying for. He knows the time frame's up, or should be getting close to up, and he's praying for his nation and for his city. So at this time in the timeline, the Medo-Persians, they're in power. We're going to talk about Darius there in verse 1. Chapter 9 is going to lay out what this 70 weeks vision is going to do. It's going to be a layout of the Jewish nation from here to AD 70. From Daniel writing this to AD 70, this is going to be a timeline. I know we've said timeline tough, but this is going to give Daniel to be able to see what is going to happen to his people, where it's going. So it'll reach until the Roman era, the coming of Jesus, to the end of the Jewish nation in AD 70 at the fall of Jerusalem. This is going to be, this is a difficult chapter, so just I've mentioned a couple different times some tools that you can use that just go over it as much as you can. There's different thoughts on what some of this stuff means. I've kind of gone with the most conservative route that I can. So that's where we're going to go. All right, let's start with verse 1. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the lineage of the Medes, who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. The same one. This is the same Darius that was in chapter 5, verse 30 and 31 in chapter 6. At least I believe it is. So in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by the books of the number of years specified by the word of the Lord through Jeremiah the prophet, that's what we read earlier, that he would accomplish 70 years in desolation of Jerusalem. Like I said, that's Jeremiah 25, verses 1 and 11, Jeremiah 29:10 also. And like we said, one of the reasons for the 70 years was the failure to follow the land Sabbath. The issue of the decree, or to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, we're going to talk about that in verse 9:25, but it becomes easy to identify when we're going through this, that Cyrus is the guy that initiates the rebuilding of Jerusalem. So his decree, and we'll read that here in just a second. We have There's also some more Isaiah 44:28, Isaiah 45:1, Isaiah 45:13, where all of these all call Cyrus out by name hundreds of years before he came around. So, Nash, will you read 2 Chronicles 36, verses 22 through 23?
Now the first year of Cyrus purchased the word of the Lord by the mouth of like Mount Jeremiah and mighty hill. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom. He also put it in writing, saying, "Thus says Cyrus king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth the Lord God of heaven has given me. And he has commanded me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is the true one, where he must be of all his people. May the Lord his God be with him like the Lord."
There's different thoughts out there, but there's writings out there where this letter, where Isaiah's writings was brought to Cyrus's attention, and this is one of the things that he's been spoke about hundreds of years before he came about, and this being spoken about, one of the reasons why he was, pretty easy going on getting this done, getting the ball going here. All right. So verse 3, talking Daniel, then I set my face toward the Lord God to make request by prayer and supplications with fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. Prayer toward Jerusalem, like in 6:10, seems to be a common practice for Daniel whenever he was, told not to worship anybody but Darius at the time. But these are actions of mourning, the fasting and the sackcloth and the ashes. But what is he praying for? It's a prayer of confession, and it's not just Daniel praying for himself, but it's Daniel praying for his nation. Daniel knows that the nation as a whole has turned away from God, and so he's not just praying that that he knows he's done wrong, but he's also that the nation has done wrong. He's praying for God for mercy. Throughout this whole chapter here, Daniel wants to go home. I mean, they're ready to go home. He wants to go home, and that's what he's longing for in here. So verse 4, and I prayed to the Lord my God and made confession and said, O Lord, great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant and mercy with those who love him and with those who keep his commandments. Daniel knows that God keeps his commandments. He's looking for that appeal. But what covenant is it that's in view here? So there's kind of two different covenants going on throughout the history of the Jewish nation. What's the first law? The law of Moses, right? So you got the Mosaic covenant. Then what would be the second covenant come along? Davidic. So Daniel knows, the Old Testament Jews, they're always looking forward, and they're always looking for Israel to come back to their glory days. And they know through Scripture that it's going to come through David. But they're thinking, I think they're thinking earthly kingdom as well. But that Davidic line through Jesus is going to be that fifth kingdom, the church that destroys it all. But so I think he's looking forward to more of that Davidical kingdom here. All right. Now that I've got you all good and confused, so we'll go on to chapter 5, or verse 5. We have sinned and committed iniquity. We have done wickedly and rebelled, even by departing from your precepts and your judgments. Verse 6. Neither have we heeded your servants, the prophets, who spake in your name to our kings and our princes, to our fathers and all the people of the land. Verse 7. O Lord, righteousness belongs to you. But to us, shame of face, as it is this day, to the men of Judah, to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and all of Israel, those near and far off, in all countries, to which you have driven them, because of the unfaithfulness that we have committed against you. Verse 8. O Lord, to us belongs shame of face, to our kings, to our princes, to our fathers, because we have sinned against you. Frequent confession for both himself and for his nation, but he recognizes the nation as a whole has sinned against God, and he's drawing on the language of the prophets. And during those verses, he's talking about how we heard the prophets, but we just kind of ignored them. We knew this was what was going to come, but we just ignored it. So he's looking back and reflecting on that. All right, verse 9. To the Lord our God belong mercy and forgiveness, and we have rebelled against him. 10. We have not obeyed the voice of the Lord our God to walk in his laws, which he set before us by his servants and the prophets. Yes, all Israel has transgressed your law and has departed so as not to obey. Your voice, therefore, the curse and oath written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, have been poured out on us because we have sinned against him. The law of Moses, what type of law? The law of Moses, what type of law was that? It's a physical law, right? So if you sinned, there are physical repercussions for that. It had to be followed in a certain way. You couldn't almost do it the right way, right? You had to follow it a certain way. And there was, with evil, there was punishment, immediate, almost eye for an eye. I mean, if you did this is going to happen. It was a clear-cut law. But Israel's sin, punishment came through, this is part of the punishment, the 70 years here. So, all right, verse 12. And as he has confirmed his words, which he spoke against us and against our judges, he judged us by bringing us a great disaster, for under the whole heaven, such has never been done as that has been done to Jerusalem. So this exile affected everybody. We kind of talked about it when they brought people back into this captivity. What type of people did they bring? Did they bring just everybody? Or no, they took kind of the cream of the crop. They took the well-educated, the princes, the nobles. They took that leadership is what they brought back, and then they turned them into. Well, their goal was to turn them into Babylonians and then scatter them back out with Babylonian rule. But God brought judgment and punishment on Jerusalem, Jeremiah 25 and 9, and then 27 and 6. Christ makes a similar statement in Matthew 24 and 21. All right, verse 13. As it is written in the law of Moses, all this disaster has come upon us. Yet we have not made the prayers before the Lord our God that we might turn from our iniquities and understand your truth. Therefore the Lord has kept the disaster in mind and brought it upon us. For the Lord God is righteous in all of the works which he does, though we have not obeyed his voice. And now, O Lord our God, who brought your people out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand and made yourself a name, as it is this day, we have sinned, we have done wickedly. So the nation as a whole, they didn't seek God. Yes, was there good people still in Jerusalem at the time of the captivity? Yeah, I mean, there were some, Daniel being one of them. But as a whole, the nation wasn't following God. God watched the Babylonians take the city. The city had been spared through prayer once before in 2 Kings 19, but God allowed Babylon to take Jerusalem. Daniel's called on God to deliver them out like he had done before out of Egypt. So, all right, verse 16. O Lord, according to all your righteousness, I pray, let your anger and your fury be turned away from your city, Jerusalem, your holy mountain, because of our sins and for the iniquities of our fathers. Jerusalem and your people are a reproach to all of those around us. Now, therefore, our God, hear the prayer of your servant and his supplications, and for the Lord's sake cause your face to shine on your sanctuary, which is desolate. The temple is destroyed by... Who destroys the temple? You got it. Who did? Well, the first time? Babylon with Nebuchadnezzar, right? So he destroys it, and that's around 586 BC. So Daniel's message is, let us go home. I mean, we're ready. The time's up. Let's let us go home. So, verse 18. Oh my God, incline your ear and hear. Open your eyes and see our desolations and the city which is called by your name. For we do not present our supplications before you because of our righteous deeds, but because of your great mercies. O Lord, O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, listen and act. Do not delay for your own sake, my God, for your city and your people are called by your name. So the city and the sanctuary, which what city are we talking about? Jerusalem. The sanctuary is what? Temple. So your city and your sanctuary. So Jerusalem and the temple. All right. The destruction of the city and the temple gave occasion for nations to blaspheme God. 2 Samuel 12:14, Ezekiel 39:23. So the glory of God had departed from the sanctuary because of what? They've been desolate, but why? Because of sin, right? So that gave these other nations, an opportunity. It's like, well, their God's not that great. I mean, they're in captivity, right? Ezekiel 11:22 through 25, Daniel 8 and verse 13, Daniel 9:26, 11:31 and 12:1. So Christ used similar language again in Matthew 23 and verse 38. Daniel's been praying for really 5 things. Praying for release of captivity. He's praying for the restoration of Jerusalem and the temple, to return home, and the prayers for something greater. What's coming, that greater thing. Matthew 12:6, Luke 24, verses 27 and 44. Those are the things of Christ saying, I'm that greater thing that they were talking about back then, that they were looking forward to. That's Christ saying, that's me. So Daniel, he's fixing to receive a vision of the something greater. So far, we have Daniel praying a prayer to go home and to rebuild God's city and sanctuary. All right, now the fun stuff. All right, verse 20. Now, while I was speaking, praying, and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God for the holy mountain of my God. Yes, while I was speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning. When did we talk about Gabriel last? Chapter 8, right? He's the one that helped him understand the ram and the goat. That's Gabriel. Whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, reached me about the time of the evening offering. And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I have now come forth to give you skill and understanding. At the beginning of your supplications, the command went out, and I have come to tell you, for you are greatly beloved. Therefore, consider the matter and understanding the vision. So once again, what was Daniel praying for? City, the sanctuary, and the people, right? So God sends Gabriel. Like I said, he was first introduced to us in chapter 8. And he is here to show Daniel what the future holds. Not just for the immediate Jews, but for the Jewish nation all the way through. Evening offering, I think that was generally like 3 or 4 in the what we call afternoon. Is when that was. So Gabriel's there to give skill to understand. He tells Daniel that he's greatly beloved. The command and the decree back in verse. What was that? One of those 3 verses, I just don't see it. But what decree that I believe is talking about is the one that Bo read in 2 Chronicles 36:15. And that decree was Cyrus' decree for them to go and rebuild Jerusalem and the temple. I believe that's the decree that we're talking about here. But we got it in 9:1, verse 2, and then here in 23, the view of that. So the 70 weeks that we're getting ready to get into, this is going to include 6 things. In verse 24, it says, and we're going to go through and read this, but verse 24 is going to talk about, it's there to finish transgression. Verse 24 also says to make end of sins. And it's also to make reconciliation for iniquity or make atonement, to bring everlasting righteousness, and to seal up vision and prophecy, And then the sixth thing is to anoint the most holy. So that's the things that this 70 weeks, all of those things are going to happen inside of that. So, all right, verse 24. 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish the transgression and to make end of the sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. All right. First of all, who's doing the talking here? It's not Daniel, it is Gabriel. Gabriel's there to do what? To give him understanding, right? All right. So 70 weeks are determined, decreed, whichever way you want to look at it. Does anybody's Bible have 77s? Or does everybody say 70 weeks? So 70 weeks, 77s. How many days are in a week? 7, right? So 77s for your people, being the Jewish people, for your holy city, being Jerusalem. This is not a literal 70 weeks. This is an expression for complete vision, the future of the people in the city of Jerusalem. That's what we're looking at here. It's what these 70 weeks are for. But they're there to finish the transgression, make end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So you kind of look through that. That should be giving you some type of vision of what this is pointing toward. There's some clues there in that first verse, what those 6 things pointing toward, what's going to wrap up all of those things in the coming. All right, so we're going to read through 24 through 27 again. So 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, the Jews, and upon thy holy city, Jerusalem, to the finish of the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from going forth the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with flood, and to the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consumption that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. All right. So start of the 70 weeks, the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. What did we say earlier? That commandment or decree, who was that from? Cyrus, right? So back in verse 25, 70 weeks are figurative symbol, beginning with Cyrus's decree, which is around 539 BC estimate, and that decree was to rebuild those things. Through Christ being crucified in the midst of the 70th week. So the week ending with destruction, the last week, the 70th week, would end with the destruction of Jerusalem AD 70 by the Romans. It's not a literal 70 weeks. It's kind of like Matthew 18 verses 21 through 22. I didn't give anybody that. Scott, will you grab that one? Matthew 18, 21 through 22. Matthew 18, verse 21 and 22.
Then Peter came to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brothers sin against me and I forgive him up to 7 times? Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7.
Yeah. So kind of look at the 70 weeks, not a literal 70 weeks, but kind of like it's a period of time. It's like Jesus said, 70 times 7. That's how many times you forgive. We don't take that as that's exactly how many times that you're to forgive. How often we forgive? Every time they ask for it, right? So 70 or 77 is figure of speech, picturing the complete remaining future of the city, the sanctuary, and the people, 9:26, 27. And then again in chapter 12 and verse 7. 70 is rooted throughout Israel's history. 70 and sevens is a picture of perfect completeness, absolute perfection, or totality. But this 70 weeks is going to refer to the completion of the Commonwealth, the system, their system, that Jewish system is going in this 70 weeks is going to come to a complete end. Verse 24, 70 weeks have been decreed or determined. Verse 26, desolations decreed, determined. A complete destruction is decreed or determined. So, in verse 27. So 70 weeks includes 6 activities. First of all, it's going to finish transgression. It's going to make an end of sin. It's going to make atonement for iniquity. It's going to bring everlasting righteousness. It's going to seal up vision and prophecy. And it's going to anoint the most holy. All 6 of those things are pointing toward who? Jesus, right? Christ. It's pointing toward the Christ. So verse 25, know therefore and understand that from going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, like I said, that's Cyrus' decree. We've read it out loud. 2 Chronicles 36, verses 22 to 23. And other scriptures point to this as well. We covered those, Isaiah 44, 26 and 28, Isaiah 45, 1, and also verse 13. So if Daniel is seeing the future of the Jews, it makes sense to start it with the Cyrus decree because that's the present day. That's the starting point. It makes sense for that. There's other, and matter of fact, in the class in the back, I went a different route. Started with a different time, but I've kept digging into it, so I've changed my position to this position. So there's other versions out there. The Drew Leonard YouTube page or the book, either way you want it, he has a bunch of different of the ones out there and the pros and cons with all of them. But the Cyrus decree makes the most sense from the starting point. All right, the continuation of 25. And to Messiah the Prince, Christ, shall be 7 weeks, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, and 62 weeks. So 62 weeks total plus the 7. The first 7 is the rebuilding of Jerusalem. The Cyrus decree, that first 7 years or 7 weeks. All right, then there's 62 weeks, the 62. So the 7 and the 62 gets us 69 weeks. And then the street shall be built again and the wall even in troubled times. So first 7 weeks are the rebuild. The next 62 weeks is basically going to be what we're going to talk about when we get to chapter 11, the things that happened in that time. But after 62 weeks shall Messiah, Christ, be cut off, but not for himself and for the people of the prince. Who's going to destroy the city and the sanctuary? Or who's in charge when the Messiah is cut off? I guess Rome, right? So, and then we talked, I think in chapter 2, or chapter 7, we talked about Vespasian being the emperor in AD 70 whenever Jerusalem was destroyed. One of his sons was the general Titus. His son Titus was the general who was actually there in Jerusalem when Jerusalem went down in AD 70 doing the destroying. But that shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So we have the Roman siege and the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. And then in the end thereof shall be with a flood, judgment. You know, flood is oftentimes just a term for judgment, God's judgment. So unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. Desolations are determined. That's the Roman invasion on Jerusalem, the siege and so forth. This brings several ends. This brings the end of the Jewish system. I don't really know how to word this or ask this, but was genealogy important to the Jews? Yes, extremely important. Why?
Part of it was the whole religious system was based upon the Levites.
Ah.
You couldn't prove you were a Levite, you didn't have a religious system.
So whenever Jerusalem and the temple in AD 7, when there's complete destruction, what happened? Was there any of that left? So the whole system, the whole Jewish system in AD 70, the old law, the Mosaic law, can it be followed after those things are done? No. So that's why this is important. So it brings into the Jewish system, the removal of the records, the destruction of the temple. So this is finishing the law of Moses. This is putting the nails in the coffin on it. AD 70 is. There's no, there was a period of time where there's the Levitical law and the Mosaic law where they can coincide together. And then there's probably still a time where you got three different laws until somebody is brought to the new, to Christ, where you got three different laws that you could be following scripturally and pleasing to God. But that's all come to an end at AD 70, right? So those three different wheels that you would have spinning and still being and following up until then, it was possible. But now there's no way to fulfill the old law, the Mosaic law, once all of these things are took out. There's no way that it can exist. All right. So verse 27. And he shall confirm and covenant with many for 1 week. That's the 70th week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate even unto the consumption. And that determined, the decree there, shall be poured out. So in order for the Jewish system to be removed, the following things had to happen. The Messiah had to be cut off. The city and the sanctuary had to be destroyed. The covenant had to be made strong. Sacrifice ceased. So those 6 things of 924 are all ushered in here in this 70th week. This all occurred in the 70th week. So we actually did get through it. So kind of an overview. So that's the gist of it. But from the issuing, I've got several things here, but from the issuing of the commandment or decree refers to Cyrus' decree, 539 BC. Like I said, that's 2 Chronicles 36, 22 and 23, Isaiah 44 and 28, Isaiah 45 and 13. These passages make it clear that Cyrus was the one to perform these actions. If Daniel is seeing the future of the Jewish nation, it makes sense to start it with Cyrus' decree, the starting of the building of rebuilding of Jerusalem. There's other views out there, like I said. Some of them start some 80 years later with Ezra and Nehemiah, but you can kind of dive into those on your own there. But so until the Messiah, the Prince, will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So you got 69 weeks from Cyrus' decree to the coming of the Messiah. So the first 7 weeks. First 7 weeks is for the rebuilding of Jerusalem. Then the 62 weeks, which came after that, to the Messiah's cut off. Saved by the bell, thank goodness. But, so the Messiah's cut off in the 70th week. But we will start on chapter 10, probably 10 and part of 11 next week.